And hi, I'm David. And lockdown's been really tough, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, my name's David. I'm one of the team at All Saints Church in Wellington. The camera's pretty high. Let me turn it down a bit. That's a bit better. My name's David. I'm one of the team at All Saints Church in Wellington. I'm on the team there. I've been there for a couple of years over in Wellington and Telford. Great to have you join us. There's probably people hopefully checking in from all over the place to the first of our series on faithful parenting in lockdown. I almost forgot what we were doing here then. Faithful parenting in lockdown. And today we're just going to have a bit of a chat about what that might mean. I envisage us being here for around 15-20 minutes or so. And today's session is just going to be a bit of a chat about what we're doing, why we're here. Not in a huge kind of philosophical sense, but just what we're doing here tonight on a Monday night. And we're also going to have a bit of a chat about something called therapeutic parenting. Now, my wife would be next to me ordinarily, but as is the case with little people, they like to cause scupper to plans, don't they? Our youngest one is a bit poorly today. We had to take her to the test centre yesterday for COVID, but it's all fine. So she's not got that. She was just a bit under the weather. So those of you that knew about that yesterday, no worries. It's all okay. But she's still pretty rough. So we think she's asleep. But that means that the other one, our oldest one, our 4-year-old, is also just a bit all over the place today, out of routine. So hopefully she'll be down here in the not too distant future. We really want this, and I'm going to speak on behalf of my wife as well, we really want this to be a conversation. Those of you that know us know that by no stretch of the imagination are we perfect parents with all the answers. But hopefully by kind of pooling our resources together, we'll be able to share all the different stuff that we know in order to parent our children better. And I don't just mean parent in terms of those of us that are birth parents. This isn't just for those people, no, this is for really any grown-ups that have an interest in children, that want to do the best for them. So maybe tonight you are a birth parent, maybe you're a foster carer, maybe an adoptive parent, maybe you're an auntie or an uncle, or maybe you just want to know more about how you can support the children that are in your life that maybe you care for or look after, or just play with in the garden, or the neighbour's children, or anything like that. So that's what tonight's all about. So as I said in the comments, please do say hello. If you see me glance down occasionally, that's because I'm looking at my phone. Hi Tom, hi Karen, hi David, hi Rachel. Great to have you. I think Gemma's watching as well. Great to have you with you. My wife's probably watching upstairs with it off speakerphone. Sometimes it shows subtitles, doesn't it? Which is always quite awkward and funny. But I want to begin just by saying why we thought we'd do this kind of series of faithful parenting in lockdown. Because I don't know about you, but as we alluded to in our introduction, it's really tough. It's really tough with kids, isn't it? It's tough anyway. But when you've got young children or older children too, any age of child that are out of routine, it's really difficult. And we were thinking, Kimberley and I, about church with children. Our 4-year-old is boisterous and likes to make himself known and is gorgeous and funny, but doesn't like to sit and listen particularly. Our 3-year-old is disabled, so all she can do at the moment is sit. So Sunday mornings for us are a bit of a challenge with 2 children, both with additional needs that are very different, complex needs. And I know lots of you watching are in a similar situation with children that find church difficult. And I think that's the case for any child, actually, that they find church difficult. And so during lockdown, when church is totally different, I don't know about you, but ours have found that a challenge. We find that the times that we don't want them to watch a screen, they like to do it. But actually, when it's Sunday morning, let's sit down and watch what's going on screen. For those of us that join with church online, they don't particularly join in. So we were thinking, okay, what can we do to engage with children online, to engage with our children with faith if it's not online? And so that's where this stems from, really. So over the next few weeks, hopefully, it's not just going to be me and Kimberley. There are going to be lots of other people sharing their ideas, their expertise, their knowledge, their experience of all different things in terms of bringing up children, looking after children. But it all boils down really to faithful parenting. Parenting as Jesus would have us to parent. Parenting in a way that disciples our children. Because actually, if we just rely on church on a Sunday morning to bring our children up as Christians, I don't think that's going to particularly work. But actually, it's our faith being an everyday normal faith that makes a difference. That's why one of the blurbs for this says, parenting your children as a Christian without it being weird or something like that. So we're going to have different things, different practical ways that we can share Jesus and faith with our children. But the crux of it is it should be natural. It shouldn't be really difficult and awkward, because if faith is part of who we are and part of our family, then it should be normal to pray and normal to talk to God and talk about him as well and things like that. So that maybe gives you an overview of the different stuff we're going to be thinking about. We're going to be thinking about what it might be like parenting children that have gone through bereavement. We're going to think about what it's like parenting and looking after loving children with additional needs. We're going to be thinking about some practical ways that we can parent with faith. We're going to be thinking about transition and school and things like that. And if you've got something that you're really passionate about, drop me a message, get in touch. We'd love to have you as a guest on the show, and we can do that online. You don't need to leave your house. We can get you in online. You can send us a video, or we can do it as a chat. So that's kind of what we're up to. Hopefully that makes sense. If you've got any questions, do please have a go. I'm really glad, Rachel. That's one of the reasons we're doing it online, because hopefully it's easier with children that if you're in the middle of bath time or whatever, you can have it on in the background and join in. So I hope you're having fun with Rubber Dub Dub. Hi, David. Good to have you with us. Thanks, David. Fine. And I'm not talking to myself, but thank you so much for joining in. All the sessions are going to be on YouTube if you want to catch up with them. So let's kick off, shall we? We're going to be thinking in the first week of something called therapeutic parenting. Therapeutic parenting. And that's going to be the next thing that we talk about for 5 or 10 minutes or so. But let's begin with a prayer, shall we? That's always good, isn't it? We want to put Jesus at the centre. We want to make it practical. So let's kick off with a short prayer. If you want to join in at home, that would be great. So Lord Jesus, we do thank you for children. We thank you for the joy that they bring and the way that they bring new ways of looking at stuff. So we pray tonight, Lord, that we might be better parents in any sense of the word. We might be better grown-ups and love children better. We pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So therapeutic parenting, you might not have heard of this. It's something that is quite popular in adoption and foster care kind of circles and parenting with children that have gone through trauma. But you might be new to it. It's something that was definitely new to me, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But we're going to go over to the States very briefly, over to the United States, to hear a bit about what therapeutic parenting is from someone who's a lot more qualified in it than I am.
Let's talk a little bit about therapeutic parenting. Therapeutic parenting is valuable, and it's a tool that we now use because scientifically we have found out that brains are different. Why are we using therapeutic parenting now? It's because people have done the scientific work and can see the proof that children that have been abused, that have experienced trauma, and that could be hospitalizations. It doesn't have to be a parent hitting a child, but it can be that. This changes their brain. Their brains grow differently, and there are parts actually missing that are smaller. Their reactive brain is bigger, and their thinking brain doesn't connect as easily as somebody who's had a healthy childhood. So this is why therapeutic parenting works. It works because instead of taking away, instead of punishing and making them lose something, which doesn't build a connection, you're adding to their life. So think about therapeutic parenting and why you would use it, because it is a really valid, amazing thing to do.
There you go, sold. So therapeutic parenting, kind of parenting aimed at children, it's true, that have gone through a particular trauma, that have had a really difficult stage in life, which is one of the reasons why it's really taught when you adopt. Both our children are adopted, so we've gone through training twice, and part of that training is training in therapeutic parenting. And I'll be honest, I found it quite difficult. I come from a teaching background in secondary school, so my idea of parenting was probably similar to how I taught my children, which was with that view of tough love, if that makes sense. With this view that actually, if you love a child, then what you do is you'd love them in a way that's tough. So, for example, the idea of a naughty step is something that actually therapeutic parenting would say is unhelpful, because for children that have experienced neglect, putting them on a step and neglecting them would just reinforce the fact that they're unwanted. Now, obviously, for regular birth children who haven't experienced neglect, that may well be an effective way, a good way, a time-out way of parenting, of discipline. I'm not saying it's wrong at all. But what I'm saying is for children that have experienced trauma, therapeutic parenting is the way forward. It's why maybe if you've seen me or Kimberley parent Arthur or Emily, but mostly Arthur, you might recognise that we do things differently to maybe how other parents would do. And that can be difficult. It can be difficult when you see Arthur maybe being violent to another, not violent, but getting a bit rough with another child, that actually we'd scoop him up and we'd hold him. We wouldn't shout at him or tell him off because that's not what would be helpful. He's used to noise, he's used to hubbub. That's in his past, that's part of this neglect and this abuse. He's used to that. So what we have to do is calm him down and tell him he's safe and tell him it's okay. For many children, they don't have that first instinct when it comes to noise, but for some they do. So that's kind of why therapeutic parenting was important. But like I said, I find it difficult. I wanted to do the tough love, and even now I find it not my natural instinct, but I'm getting better. It's a shame Kimberley is still putting Arthur to bed because she is so good at this, at reminding me that actually I'm the adult in the situation and he or she is the child. So we're going to look at something. We're going to look at therapeutic parenting. If you've got some thoughts, please do put them in the comments. We'd love this to be a conversation. But therapeutic parenting is about that. It's about acknowledging the fact that children that have experienced neglect and abuse, their brains are wired differently. So they need to be parented differently. And what I think is why this is important, particularly for lockdown, is that actually, I would say every single child during lockdown has experienced some form of trauma. Now, for many children, that isn't as extreme as neglect or abuse, even though that has gone up during lockdown. For many children, that won't be, fortunately, as extreme as losing someone that they've been close to, but I know that's been the case for some that I know. But for all of our children during lockdown, all of a sudden, everything they know has been taken from them. They've lost their routine. They've lost their school. They've often lost their friends in terms of seeing them face to face. And so they're locked down at home with mum or dad or both or one. And mum and dad often have to work at the same time. And that might be new. So they're at home with a parent who often they have time with, but actually this parent is often having to work and balance that. And everything is so different. On the odd time they might go out. They're not allowed to get close to people. They've got to be careful. They're washing their hands all the time. All stuff that's right to do. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's important to stay safe, obviously. But all this stuff is so new that I wonder that actually therapeutic parenting is something that all of us with young children during the pandemic have to do. So yes, it's a style of parenting that's developed for children who've had a tough start in life. And sometimes it's known as re-parenting. Sometimes it's known as reparenting because what you've got to do is you've got to go back to the old pathways in the brain and kind of do something about them and make them better. One of the ways it was taught to me on training, and I found this really helpful. Imagine you're on a beach. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Close your eyes. You're there now. I can hear my children, but it's okay. I'm imagining I'm on a nice hot beach, warm beach. And you know that, imagine it's like a beach with sand dunes, but there are no natural paths, but what you see is a path that people have made, one of those desire lines, a path that a person has made through a dune. Yeah? So that path is a well-worn path. What would happen if you thought, actually, instead of this path, I'm going to go down that path? Now, you might do it once, and that path would still be there, and this path wouldn't really, would it? But you keep walking down that path, and eventually what will happen is this path will become overgrown again and become a sand dune with, with all this grass and things like that. Whereas this path will become just sand because it's been worn down. I don't know if that analogy helps you, but it did for me. Because it made me think that actually children that have experienced trauma, their brains have a certain way of working. So, for example, we don't talk about our children's history much because it's their history, it's not ours. But it's safe to say that if there's loud noise going on or something sudden happens, then our son finds that really difficult. From what happened in the womb with loud noises being negative, that'll happen still now. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's how his brain is wired. Well, there is something we can do about it, but there's nothing we can do about it overnight. That's how his brain is wired. But what we can do through therapeutic parenting is walk this path instead of that path. So eventually what will happen is this path will grow over and this different way of working will be the way forward. But that path will always be there still. It won't totally disappear, but hopefully that one will become the better worn path. Now you might be thinking, oh well, all parenting has fads that come and go, doesn't it? And that's true, I guess. Excuse me, that is true. But what I want to argue, and this is where faith comes into it tonight, what I want to say to us is actually therapeutic parenting is something that Jesus would do. Therapeutic parenting is how God the Father parents me. When I shout at God, he doesn't shout back. When I do something God doesn't want me to do, he doesn't ignore me and go and tell me to sit on the naughty step. He holds me and tells me I'm his child, and he tells me I'm forgiven, and he tells me that I'm loved. That's how God parents me in a therapeutic way. So if that's how God parents, surely that's a similar way to how we should parent and love our children. So we're going to look at a model of therapeutic parenting called PACE. Pase Parenting. Some of you might have heard of this. Those of you that might be watching and you're adopters and you're foster carers, you've probably had this. Social workers, if you're watching, you've had this coming out of your ears, I'm sure. PACE. It's a model of therapeutic parenting, and it's underneath me here, and it stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And what therapeutic parenting says, what this model says is that, okay, this is how we should deal with our children. We should be playful, accepting. We should be curious. We should be empathetic. And that's when we discipline, in particular. When we discipline. When we get to the point where we go, I don't know about you, but it happens a lot. Breathe, breathe, breathe. And you think, actually, can I be playful about this? Can I be accepting? Can I be curious? Can I be empathetic? Rather than just losing my rag and no one winning. No one winning. If I lose my rag and yell at my kid, no one wins. What they learn is that, okay, when I get angry, I shout. And so there's different ways of doing it. Now, that's not to say that I don't always lose my rag and shout, but there we go. That's not true. Oh, I think I can hear my wife. Happy days. This is good because this is the bit that she's really good at. So what I thought we'd do is go through each one very briefly, talk a bit about what it looks like, but also think about the theology of it. Think about what the Bible says about each of these things. Hopefully that's okay. And please do join in with the comments. I might read a few of them out. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad that was a helpful analogy. And Tom says that he's tried to remember when he's felt his most caged and frustrated, that children are feeling that too, but without the same toolkit to process the situation. I think that's wonderful. I think that's spot on. Someone said to me once that children don't have, this is obvious, isn't it, really, but children don't have the same perspective we do they? So we had it today. We had cauliflower cheese for tea, and Arthur saw it and burst into tears because he didn't want broccoli and cauliflower cheese. He wanted it without the slimy bits. Now, I had to really think, oh my goodness, okay, calm down. Proper tears coming out, really sad about it. And I really felt like saying, oh, for goodness sake, it's broccoli cheese. And first of all, that wouldn't have helped the situation because he was fight or flight. He was crying. When I'm bursting into tears and that upset, I don't have a rational way of thinking about it. But for him, for his 4-year-old brain, that was a genuine disaster because he hasn't got the perspective we do. Now, for me, I think, well, actually, Do I like cauliflower cheese? Well, it's okay, but I'd rather have a steak. But it was very tasty and I ate it. Because in perspective, I'm thinking, well, I've got all my money to pay the bills. I've got food on the table. There are lots of people that haven't. I can put it in perspective. But when you're 4, you can't. Anyway, I've got off on a tangent, but Tom, that's great. That's really true. Thank you. So playfulness is the first one. And this is, as it says, it's adopting a fun attitude with your child. Let them know that you delight in their company. You enjoy playing with them. You enjoy having fun with them. And you reassure them really that a conflict that might come up doesn't harm your relationship that you have with them. Playing is the way that children learn, right? It's the way that children interact with the world. So I think the way that we are playful with them helps them to deal with their emotions. I'm working from home at the moment to stay safe, and it's really difficult. Hi Sarah, good to have you. We were 10 minutes late either, don't worry. Sarah, who's joined in, was Arthur's foster mum for a couple of years. We're still good friends. She should really be doing this session because she knows a lot about PACE. But do chip in with the comments, Sarah, anything you want to say. That'd be great. So I'm working from home. That's difficult. And Arthur often wants to pop up and play with me and have a bit of fun. And I have to remember, actually, that's really important. And I'm quite good at being a bit of a loon. I'm quite good at being playful, I think. But it's those situations that you don't want to be playful that I think it's most helpful when you are playful. And so if we put that into maybe a situation that happened tonight, a situation that happened tonight with A, he's a bit tired and he gets asked to do something and he shouts back, no, I don't want to. And of course your immediate reaction, well, my immediate reaction in my head is to be, don't shout, that's not helpful. And of course I'm shouting back to tell him that shouting's wrong, and that's just totally ridiculous when you think about it, isn't it? Luckily, Kimberley was next to him, not me, and she decides to shout back, but in a fun way. She went, oh, you're so noisy! And all of a sudden, a situation that was quite angry from Arthur was turned into a game, and it was quite funny. And we ended up making train noises. And then once we've calmed down, we can just say, oh, isn't it much nicer when we're talking to each other? And he's like, yes, it is. So being playful. And I also think that's important because it's what God does with us. So here's Zephaniah 3:17 says, he will take delight in you. He will no longer rebuke you. He will rejoice over you with singing. Now, of course, God disciplines us, but this is a God who delights in us. This is a God who loves to spend time with us. This is a God who I think is a bit playful. And we see this in Jesus too. I think we see it in Jesus in the way Jesus tells stories. People ask him a question and he tells them a story and he gets them involved. So I wonder if when we're playful, we're echoing the way that God parents us. But that's the first way we're called to, kind of the first thing about therapeutic parenting, playful. I'd love in the comments if you want to chip in with anything you've done recently that you think is a bit playful. A way that you might have disciplined your child that's a bit more of a playful way of doing it. It's something I find probably the hardest thing to do, but it's a good way of diffusing the situation we've found, getting rid of the anger and just making it a bit, okay, we're just going to have fun. So playfulness was the P. A is acceptance. Acceptance. And this is really simple. It's what it says. It's loving our children as they are. Loving them, including, not despite of, loving them including their tantrums and their fears and their behaviour cycles and all the stuff we find difficult. It's loving them. Doesn't mean we ignore the behaviour, but it means that we accept them and we look beyond their behaviour to see what's happening inside. And I think it's pretty obvious as I'm saying that isn't that what God does with us? God doesn't say, when I became a Christian, Jesus didn't say to me, yeah, you can, David, but first of all, you need to sort out, and I won't tell you what I will need to sorting out, but first of all, you need to sort out this and this and this and this, and then you can become a Christian. No, God doesn't do that. He accepts us as the mess that I was, and he loves me anyway. And then he, through therapeutic parenting, loves me and tries to help me behave in a more helpful way. And one of my favourite Bible verses talks about this, and it's right at the beginning of Ephesians. And this is one of the verses actually that calls me and Kimberley to adopt, but let's not go down there. Ephesians 1 says, he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance, it carries on with his pleasure, his will, to the praise of his grace. So he chose you and he chose me before the creation of the world. He accepts us as we are. He loves us as we are. And then, yes, he calls us to change. Another story is Luke 23, the criminal on the cross. And he says to Jesus, Jesus says to the criminal, yes, today you'll be with me in paradise. We don't know anything about this criminal's background, but Jesus accepts him as he is. That man wouldn't have had much time to change his behaviour or to make amends for whatever he had done, but Jesus accepted him. So what happens is, I think, when we accept our children as they are, we realise that this bad behaviour we might see is like the surface of an orange. We see that, but we know that inside there's something a bit different. It's a representation of their fears and the stuff that they can't express, so it comes out. How can a 3 or a 4-year-old or a young child or a child with additional needs talk through a problem? Sometimes they can't, and often they can't, and it just comes out in a behaviour that we might perceive as difficult, as bad, as naughty. Very often I would suggest that's what we do with God as well. So what thoughts have we had? Liz, welcome to the party. It is a party. I've got my tea and I've got my cake. Happy days. 2 slices, one for Kimberley when she comes back. I'll give her the big one as well. So Sarah says this, the children didn't want to pack their toys away, so Mark picked them up by their ankles and helped them pick up the toy hanging upside down. He got done pretty quickly. That's really good playfulness, turning it into a crane. And yeah, that's a really good example, actually. Arthur likes being picked up and swung like a crane as well. Yeah, it's just a way, good old Mark, of making it fun, of turning it into a game. You can think of sometimes with food we do it. I don't want to eat my last. Well, let's see who's going to finish their food first. Obviously, doing it safely without choking or anything like that. So acceptance is the other one, and I think that's really important. When we accept our children as they are, we realise that their bad behaviour isn't them. Very often, it's just an expression of the stuff that's gone on. Again, for children that have experienced neglect or trauma or abuse, they've experienced stuff that isn't their fault. They've been put in situations that isn't their fault. And so this way of expressing that, we have to nurture and love and help them work through it. So we've done playfulness, we've done accepting, and one of the last 2, and you're still with me. That's good. Happy days. Elliot, tuning in from Herefordshire. Hello, brother. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us at Faithful Parenting during lockdown. Normally Kimberley would be here, but she's still putting them to bed. Curiosity is the next one. Curiosity. And this is quite a good one, I think, part of therapeutic parenting. And this is the thing that I really try hard to do when I just want to have a snap reaction. So, for example, I come downstairs and Arthur has taken all the toilet roll out of the toilet and thrown it all over the kitchen floor. Now, my natural reaction would be, what are you doing with the toilet roll? Put it back. That's not what you do with it. Blah, 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 blah. That's something that I find really easy to do. But what curiosity asks us to do is take a breath and go, okay, I wonder why that's happened. I wonder what it is that has led that to happen. So the question I would ask in that situation to my child isn't, why have you done that? But the question is, well, I wonder why the toilet roll's all over the floor. I wonder why the toilet roll's all over the floor. Can you tell me why? And then all of a sudden what you'll find out is that actually, for example, they've just watched something on the telly about new carpets and they thought they'd give us a new carpet. And then we've got lots of this, so let's turn it into a carpet. So what you've got then is the reason for it. You can tell that's a true story, can't you? What you've got then is a reason for it. And when you find the reason, you think, well, actually, I can't really, I don't think, tell my child off for that, because they're doing it out of kindness. But what I can say is, oh, great, okay, I don't know if we need a new carpet though. What else could we use it for? Let's put it back in the toilet or something like that. So you've been curious instead of jumping down their throats, and the situation isn't like that, but you're having a conversation about it. And the other question you might ask yourself is, I wonder why they're behaving like that. I wonder why they're doing that. And you might look for body language or other signs that might give you clues. At church, when it's too noisy and too confined, Arthur has sensory overload. And this might happen after church at tea and coffee, and they're running around. And then all of a sudden, after running, sometimes he'll just either find the nearest child and give them a little tap on the face. Liz Nash will know that often it's Arthur and Elijah that are running around having great fun, which is what children were born to do. Hey? Or the other thing that they'll do is he'll just sit on the floor and cover his face up like that, because it's all become too much all of a sudden. And so curiosity makes me think, okay, so what's happening here? Why has this happened? And often I realise that actually as the parent, I would put my son in a situation where I knew he wouldn't be able to manage. So what can I do next time to either keep him out of that situation or say, hey, you know when you're finding it really tough and it's getting too noisy, come and tell me and we'll go somewhere else. I don't know if that's helpful, or if any of you have any examples of when curiosity has helped. Karen has said that we did dance tidying away if we were fed up with shouting at kids to tidy the lounge. Great idea. So that's going back to playfulness, isn't it? Making it a fun thing to do. Dance tidying away. I like that idea. I might try that. People I know put timers up and they say, how many toys can we tidy away in a minute? Go. And it's just being playful, making everything into a game. When we go for a walk, we might say, oh, right, we need to look out for a letter A and we need to look out for a green car. And it's just making it fun. And yeah, Tom, great. The thing behind the thing. So you see this behaviour, but actually what has caused it to happen? What is the thing behind the thing? And I think that's true with grown-ups as well. Those of us that deal with people on a regular basis know that often when people are upset with us or maybe angry with us, sometimes it's something else they're angry about, but we get but it's expressed in a different way. So that's curiosity. And do we think maybe God is curious? Because he knows it all, doesn't he? But I want to say that actually there are times when God is curious. And I really think this is therapeutic parenting, because God, of all people, doesn't need to be curious. He chooses to be. He chooses to ask questions that are curious. So Genesis 3, verse 9, the Lord God called out to the man, where are you? Now God knew where Adam was, right? He's God. And I'm sure the Garden of Eden wasn't that big. So God knew where Adam was. But there was still a sense that he wanted to ask the question. And he asked the question to Adam to get a response and to get him thinking through the behaviour. He's curious to hear it from him. We see it as well when Jesus says to Saul, why are you persecuting me? Jesus knew why Saul was persecuting him on the road to Emmaus. Acts chapter 6, I think it's Acts chapter 6, maybe 9, probably 6. I'm sure someone will tell me in a minute if I'm wrong. But we see this as well in Jesus saying to his disciples, who do you say I am? In John's Gospel, who do you say I am? And on the road to Emmaus, Luke 24, on the road to Emmaus, the disciples, Jesus says to the two disciples, what things have happened in Jerusalem? Now, Jesus was there. Jesus knew, but he was curious. We talked a bit about that on Sunday morning. That's on our YouTube channel if you want to catch up with that, on our All Saints Wellington YouTube channel. So God knows the answers, but he asks the questions anyway, because it's a two-way relationship. He's interested in us. He never gets bored of conversation, ever. So I think curiosity as a parent shows our children we're interested in them. Why has that happened? Helps them to trust us. It's a struggle for vulnerable children to trust. And I said earlier, and I'll say it again, that I think during this pandemic, we're going to get children that didn't struggle before, that maybe do now, because everything has changed. A good friend of mine from college said on Twitter this week that she's having these kind of problems with one of her children in terms of going back to school and feeling safe that never happened before because of the pandemic and the change that it's had. So I wonder if by being curious, by asking questions, next time we want to kind of with our child and kind of get a bit ratty, we might say to them, I wonder why that happened. I wonder why that happened. But the point, it's drilled into you so much when you do adoption training that there was a stage where me and Kimberley, instead of having a moan at each other, would say, Kimberley would say to me, I wonder why that plate didn't get into the dishwasher, instead of, David, put your plate in the dishwasher, which after a while got a bit passive aggressive, but it was also quite funny. And it was a good way of reminding ourselves that actually with children, that's a great way of having that conversation. God seeks relationship with us. God is curious. He wants to know about us. And so we are with our children. So playful, acceptance, curious. Let's have a look at our comments. I'm curious to see what they are. We've had Liz saying that often Elijah will want to help him to tidy up, so we'll do it together. Sarah says we might use curiosity to get to the bottom of feelings and emotions. An example would be, I wonder if you shouted because you're feeling sad, you can't see your friend right now. That's a really good point, actually, that often these children can't express themselves in words, but we can for them. You say, I wonder why did you shout? I wonder why. And it helps them to, and we're not saying, you shouldn't have shouted at me. We're saying, I wonder why you did it. And by doing that, showing them the words they need to express themselves. Happened this afternoon watching Bob the Builder with our 4-year-old. All of a sudden he turns round and gives me a little whack on the arm. And instead of being like, where did that come from? It was, I wonder why, is that because you're quite tired and you want mummy when she's downstairs? And it's like, yeah, that's why. And then within a minute, you're having a cuddle again. It's giving our children the words they need to express themselves. Great, that's really helpful, thanks. Oh, I didn't know that, Tom, that's really good. So curiosity is also used for like medical and nursing training too, advocacy and inquiry. That's interesting, no, I didn't know that. So our last one, we looked at playfulness, we looked at acceptance, we looked at curiosity, and our last one is empathy. Empathy. So dictionary definition that I'm going to shamelessly read out is this. Swig of my tea first, sorry. Empathy is showing an ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Perhaps, for example, some of us might know, some of us might have known abuse or neglect as children. Some of us might have experienced loss at a young age, so we can empathise with children that have gone through that. But for many of us, we might be fortunate enough that we didn't. And so all we can do is listen and just try to understand what it might be that children are feeling. We think of children that have experienced particular loss and trauma, lots of children in care that have gone through lots of different caregivers and lots of different adults that were caring for them. They went to another one and then another one. And so even now still we get sometimes our son saying to us on the way to school, I'm still coming home, aren't I? And it really breaks your heart. It's really sad. But we know that all we do, we keep walking that path. We keep saying, yes, you're coming home. So every day, we don't do it as much now because we don't need to. That wasn't recently. He's much better at school now. When he started, that's his reaction. He was, I'm still coming home, aren't I, Mummy? Still coming home. And so what we were doing is we were walking that path, not that one. We were saying, like, that is the old path. We're walking this path now. And every day we're going to remind you numerous times, this is your home, this is your family, and we love you. And so we're empathising because we know what they've been through. We haven't experienced it, but we know the loss that they've gone through. And I wonder if we can think of similar things with the pandemic. That actually I don't know about you, but I miss going out. Oh my goodness, I miss a fried breakfast at Gratitude. I miss seeing grown-ups. And so I know what it must be like for my children that don't get to see their friends or are stuck inside or whatever. And what it makes me realise as well, thinking about screen time for a bit, we've got probably lots of different views on screen time, but sometimes when it's raining and rubbish weather or I'm a bit under the weather, all I want to do is sit and watch Netflix and chill. That's all I want to do. And so when a 4-year-old who's feeling a bit poorly, all he wants to do is sit and drink hot chocolate and watch Fireman Sam, part of me thinks I can be empathetic about that. As long as it's not, 24 hours a day, every day of the week when he's got a small cold. We can be empathetic about it. Now, screen time's a different thing. Maybe we'll have a week on screen time. That'll be a good one to talk about, maybe. So that's what kind of empathy talks about. We try and understand and listen where our children come through. And you know what? The good news is that God's ability to empathise with us is greater than our ability to empathise with our children. Hebrews 4:15 says this. It says, we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathise with our weakness. Jesus was tempted in every way, just as we are, but without sin. So when I'm tempted to do something I know I shouldn't, my encouragement is that Jesus has been there before me. He's gone through it. He's come out the other side and he won. He was able to stand firm. So he can empathise with me in my weakness. God knows what it's like to feel alone and rejected and abused. He knows what it's like to be bullied and bereaved because Jesus felt all those things. Tempted in every way. He felt everything that it was to be human. So we're never alone when we walk with him. So what does it look like if we're empathetic with our children? I think, like I said before, it's just understanding. It's knowing, trying to know and see what they've been through, seeing it from their eyes. So the good news for us is that God, as the perfectly empathetic God, hopefully helps us to be more empathetic. So that's PACE, that's Therapeutic Parenting in a nutshell. We've whizzed through it. I wonder if there are any more comments that you've got. We'll probably be finishing in a couple of minutes. We've got a prayer, but if you've got any questions, that would be good. Any questions on therapeutic parenting while I finish my cup of tea and have my cake, or anything you'd like to look at over the next couple of weeks. If you've got a particular expertise, we'd love you to join with us. But I hope that that's a useful way, let's put it back to PACE, a useful way of thinking about different ways of parenting. And like I said, it's a shame Kimberley isn't here because she is so good at this. Those of you that have seen Kimberley as mum will know that she's wonderful, and there's still the geography teacher in me that likes to walk around with a walkie-talkie and be grumpy and needs to chill out a bit. I'm really glad, Sarah, that Fireman Sam and hot chocolate isn't just our life. But yeah, it's been Arthur's day, really, bless him. But there we go. And as if by magic, just as I finished talking about therapeutic parenting, Kimberley has come down. So maybe when Kimberley walks through, I'll get her to say a prayer for us, because there's one here. Oh, I can hear her. She's going to come through.
Hi.
Really good timing, Kimmy. We've just gone through all of PACE.
Oh, good work.
We've talked about the theology of it. We've talked about all the things. Everyone's sold and everyone's going to do it. But I've asked for any questions. We haven't got any questions yet. I couldn't think of any examples, particularly of being empathetic. So,
no comment.
So I was wondering if you could. So while you're thinking, I'll read out the comments that I've made. Rachel Honeyman, you're right. She is amazing. Lydia said, I find it hard to do after prolonged sleep deprivation. Yes. You know what? I was really horrible last night. It was 2:30 in the morning. Emily had been awake for about an hour and a half, it felt like. I was trying to get to sleep and I just wasn't very pleasant. My words could have been nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Not to my children, obviously. I muttered under my breath in bed. I wouldn't talk to their face like it. Behind their back, that's fine, right? Yeah, I'm with you. And I don't know what the answer is to sleep deprivation. Coffee, chocolate, getting yourself around people that get it. You're right, it's really difficult. I find it a lot easier to do on a when the sun's shining and everything's good, it's a lot easier to do it than at 7:30 at night when they should be in bed. And yes, Karen, lockdown has made it harder, I think. But we've also found lockdown, I think, a bit of a blessing in terms of Arthur was finding school quite tough. He was getting a bit of a struggle with it. And then actually this has given him an extra period of lockdown at home with us 24/7, which is usually a blessing. He is quite good at invading Zoom prayer meetings with pants on his head and doing a little dance wiggle, which is amusing. but this has reminded him, I think, of where he is, and he's actually a lot better now at school than he was before, which is interesting. But having said that, it's been difficult, and there are times when there's been times when Kimberley has done a 2-hour walk to the shop to get milk, and I'm like, where have you gone? And she's like, I've gone for a walk. She texts me saying, I've taken a detour around Dot Hill, don't worry. I'm like, great, thanks. Liz has said hello to you.
Hi, Liz.
So before we close, have you got any examples of empathy or anything about PACE examples?
I don't really know what you've said, to be honest.
I just said really that being empathetic is knowing what they've gone through and keeping that in mind when we deal with them and talk with them.
Yeah. Letting them know that you're there and ready to hear what they've said, or what they're feeling or thinking, I guess, and not shutting down that emotion, but kind of exploring it and being ready to work it out with them, I think is important.
So the challenge this week then maybe is that those situations that you want to go, oh, and you feel yourself, I don't know about you, but I just feel myself, I'm going to go, volcano time, is to think, okay, PACE, can I do this playfully? Can I do this in a way that accepts my children as they are, not despite their tantrums, but including it? Can I be curious? And I shared our story of how when you used to say, I wonder why your plate isn't in the dishwasher. And things like that. I wonder why this plate isn't in the dishwasher. But it's a good way of talking to our children. And yeah, I think that's a really good point actually, Tom. PACE isn't just for children that have experienced trauma. It's especially for them. But I think PACE is for every child. And I also think actually PACE, if we talk to each other in a therapeutic parenting way, wouldn't the world just be really nice? If everyone was just playful and accepting and curious and empathetic to each other. I think that's a really good point. So I think we've come to an end tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to be here every Monday night. I don't quite know what we're going to do next week. I think we might think about kind of faith stuff in terms of what can we do. Because I don't know about you, but church on a Sunday morning with a TV doesn't work with our children. I know it works with some of them. Craft activities doesn't work with our children unless it's involving a big stick and lots of paint and mess, in which case it would work for about 5 minutes. So we're going to be thinking, I think, next week about what easy wins, what can we do as family to include Jesus in the middle of it that isn't cheesy and isn't weird, basically. That's going to be the go. So if you've got some ideas, please drop us a comment. If you've got any questions or anything you'd like to see included, please drop us a line and we'll do that. Thanks so much for tuning in. I think we're going to end with a prayer. Kimberley, would you like to say a prayer for us?
Yeah.
So I'm going to close my eyes. You can do what you'd like, and then we will go.
Lord, you're such a good Father to us. You delight in us. You accept us as we are. You're interested in us. You long for us to trust you wholeheartedly, and you empathise with all we've been through. It's sometimes difficult to parent in this way. When I'm faced with difficult situations, please help me to pause and listen to the response that you want me to make. Please fill the gaps for my children when I don't. And please heal my children's wounds and mature them into people who love you with all their heart, soul and mind. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week at Monday at 8 o'clock. Bye.
Bye. Hi, I'm Kimberley.
And hi, I'm David. And lockdown's been really tough, hasn't it?
Yeah.